He is a director of Sri Child Clinic in Nagpur and professor at the Indira Gandhi Government Medical College. Also, he is a director of the Center of Excellence, and he was a chairman of National Pediatric Intensive Care Chapter in 1998 to 2000. ABG is known by the Dev Pujari sir, and Dev Pujari sir is known by the ABG. Nobody can explain easily like a Dev Pujari sir. And today he is going to give the lecture about the basics of ABG. The people who don't know are the general practitioner who wants to know about the ABG. So he is going to give today the basics of the ABG. Yeah. So you can start.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. And without going through the formalities, I thank Kolhapur Pediatric Association for giving me this chance today to talk to you. It's a pleasure. And I know in the time of COVID, we're all going through exceptionally different situation. Important thing today is that we all must know ABG. In fact, like these are some of the largest downloaded apps today. But in COVID, it's more than 1 lakh plus the earlier 2 lakhs apps have been downloaded across the world. So, it is important. All of us must know it because, it could happen tomorrow that we are kind of asked to be working in COVID. And in that case, I think it would be mandatory to know how the blood gas diagnosis works. So, and in fact, it is really very, very, this is an example of academic terrorism. Like we have been kind of, the mind is like ABG is a very complex topic, is better left unattended and don't worry about that. That is not the situation. All of us can very, very easily learn how to analyze arterial blood gas. And I will take you through the steps, but just forget about the fear associated with this chapter. And like all this is on net, so you just concentrate on what we're going to talk today. And like I will introduce you to the apps that I have developed. You have to be just using these in 2 steps, that's all, and you will get the diagnosis. And the important thing would be to correlate this diagnosis clinically and then to approach as to how do you manage patients. So knowing the diagnosis is just half the truth. Clinical correlation is very important. So we're going to discuss all these today. And my only request is don't sleep or don't snore. If your mic is on, I might hear the snoring. You could even mute the mic, that could be better and more safer for me. Now, in today's talk, we're not going to talk about the physiology or various theories of ABG. What I'm going to discuss is simple and bedside approach to ABG analysis. So, in ABG, there are 3 important things: pH, PaCO2, and PaO2. When you talk of pH and PaCO2, you talk of acid-base assessment. When you talk of PaCO2 and PaO2 together, you talk of respiratory assessment. Add this to a good clinical evaluation and you have evaluated the whole ABG completely. Is this clear? So pH and CO2 together would be acid base. PaCO2 and PaO2 together will be respiratory assessment. So in fact, acid base has these 2 important components and both are equally important, right? So we need to evaluate them separately, correlate them with the clinical conditions and come to the diagnosis. Now this is exactly what a typical ABG report looks like. No, the whole report looks so complex and so frightening, but there are very few things that you need to look into this report. A lot of these are added to sell these machines. They're all calculations. They are not all that necessary. We will focus only 3 or 4 things and we come to the ABG diagnosis. So you don't really get frightened with this report. As you can see here, it has the
Excuse
data.
me, sir. Sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt you.
yeah.
Your slide screen should be enlarged.
Oh, really? So,
Mahesh,
yeah, I'm on a full mode. Yeah,
सर आहे एनलार्ज आहे
आहे ना?
आहे ना?
हो आहे आहे
माझ्याकडे ही पूर्ण साईडच आहे. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
येस सर येस सर
हा, आता झाली. Okay.
Now you know what? You have
Yeah.
the patient ID and date. Then the most important thing that you see here are the measured parameters. Remember, ABG machine measures pH, CO2, and PaO2. That's all. The bicarbonate that we often been talking about for so many years is calculated and not measured by the ABG machine. So what the machine does is measures only 3 components: pH, CO2, and PO2. So rest of all that, rest of all the other things is calculated numbers of some of those things. Okay, you need to concentrate only on these 3 things: pH, CO2, and PO. Forget about the corrected numbers. They are corrected for the temperature and things like this is not important. Amongst the calculated parameters, we will look into as to what should be looked at. So now, we always fear about the so-called Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. We are not going to touch this equation. Okay, this has been terrorizing us for so many years. So we're not going to touch and talk about it. Okay, as I've told you, measured parameters and calculated parameters, some of them are important to us and we will focus on these. That was about ABG. We were talking about acid-base status by looking into those parameters. If you want, I can. So this is what the acid-base status is. But if you look at the oxygen issues, which are going to be extremely important, like in today's world of COVID, I think this is something that we need to definitely understand. Now here, when you talk of oxygen, you talk of PaO2, partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. Now, this is by ABG. What the pulse oximeter does, it measures the oxygen saturation. Now, please remember the difference between these 2 things. Pulse oximeter is oxygen saturation. It measures it, whereas ABG measures PaO2. Now, you might ask me, there are 2 parameters, which of them is important? Both have important values in different areas. We will discuss about that. Okay, but be very sure that the ABG machine measures PaO2, whereas pulse oximeter measures the saturation of hemoglobin. Now, there are certain parameters which I have shown. They are calculated. All the red things that you see here are calculated from PaO2, hemoglobin percentage, and saturation measured by the pulse oximeter. Is that clear? Okay, so what the ABG machine measures is PaO2, what the pulse oximeter measures is saturation. Now, this is the app that I have. The name of this app is ODC. I will show you how it works. Okay. So this, can you see the red and blue icons here? These are all the
Yes.
apps developed by me, and they're extremely useful at bedside. So this is the oxygen diffusion curve app ODC. Okay. Now in this, you enter the hemoglobin saturation that you get from the pulse oximeter. So you can enter it here, and you can move this to increase it or decrease it. Now what you can see here is saturation 97%. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
PaO2 is now shown as 79. Okay. So that PaO2 is coming from your blood gas machine, and now enter the hemoglobin. Now see what is happening to the content of hemoglobin as you enter the hemoglobin saturation. When the hemoglobin is 13, the content of hemoglobin shown is 16.37. Is that correct? But if the hemoglobin is only 6, the content of oxygen in the blood is 7.68. So when somebody is asking you what is the amount of oxygen in the blood, what is the amount of oxygen in the blood, in your mind you should be calculating the content of oxygen as I've shown you in the app. Now this content should be at least should be somewhere around 12. Okay, if it is not 12, it is less than that. In that case, your hemoglobin is apparently very low. In that case, you might need to give him a blood transfusion. So raise the hemoglobin level from 7. Now you just see the content. Focus on the content. It is 8.9 now. If after transfusion, if your hemoglobin goes up to 10, the content goes up to 12.64, and this is good enough. Okay, so don't,
Yes.
if you want to read, I've given you this information. You can read this information, but don't worry to put your head into all this. Today, remember, let's imagine you're dealing with a patient who has COVID. Whether he is containing enough oxygen in the blood, how would you know? You should try to know what is the content of oxygen in the blood. If it is more than 12.64, you have enough oxygen in the blood. If his hemoglobin is 6 grams, you can see the content is just 7.68. We need to give a top-up transfusion, and how much? To raise the hemoglobin to about maybe 12. So you need to just give blood enough packed cells, enough to increase the content to around 12, and that is good enough content in the blood. I will repeat this again. Let's say you have a patient who has pneumonia, who has distress, who has ARDS. Your pulse oximetric saturation could be, you can see here, the saturation is 92%. Okay, so pulse oximeter is showing saturation of 92%. But don't presume that the amount of oxygen in the blood is good. It may not be. Like at the same saturation, if your hemoglobin is less, the content is less. Okay. So it is important to check both these and see that you have enough content of oxygen in the blood. Okay. Now, so this is how the app works. Okay, and you can just use it and see that you have enough content in the blood, and see that your patient is properly oxygenated. Now, when it comes to respiratory failures, okay, you have two types of respiratory failures. I'm again not going to go into details of all this, but this is important clinically. Like for example, let's imagine that you have a patient who has got status epilepticus. You gave him IV midazolam, and he was breathing like this, and now stops breathing. Okay, his respiration starts going down. This is a respiratory failure, which is type 2 respiratory failure. That means his problem is problem of ventilation. You know, he is not able to ventilate properly. This problem is not of oxygen. This problem is not of oxygenation. This is called a type 2 respiratory failure. Now imagine if you have a patient, you have given him midazolam, and after 5 minutes, he stops breathing. Okay. My question is, what percent of oxygen you will give to this patient? If the answer is 100%, how many of you would say the answer is correct? Okay, I'm not able to hear you, but I'm sure a lot of you would say that you need to give 100% oxygen to this patient. Now that's not the correct answer. In fact, even if you don't give any oxygen to this patient, mind you, even if you don't give any oxygen to this patient, but just put ambu bag and ventilate him, okay, just ventilate with ambu bag, and his saturation will automatically come up. Okay, now we spend a lot of time in trying to give oxygen and all that. What has happened with this patient is he stopped breathing. Okay, answer is you make him breathe. If he's not breathing, give him an artificial breathing. Okay, the answer is not oxygen here. The answer is because he is not breathing, okay, make him breathe by giving ambu bag. Just be cool, cover his head, neck, face properly. You know, if you make him breathe properly, maybe his oxygen will come up.
Okay.
Now, suppose you go further and you want to know as to how you would assess the status of oxidation. Let's take this out. I spoke to you about the oxygen parameters. For a practitioner, what is important to know is a pulse oximeter. Everybody talks of saturation today. Okay. Remember, pulse oximeter gives you saturation, but not the content, not the content. Because if, you know, it could happen that this patient's hemoglobin is 6 grams, it shows a saturation of 100%, but the amount of oxygen present in his blood is less. So just because the saturation is all right, you should be fully satisfied. Okay. Now, a very, very simple formula to remember as to how do you know enough oxygen is going from the alveoli to the blood is, I call this as 20 into 5 is 100. 20, normally air contains 20% oxygen. Is that correct? Now the air that I'm breathing in contains 20% oxygen. And if you do my AVG now in this moment, my AVG contains PaO2, which is 100. So in normal situation, if I breathe 20%, it should give you 100 PaO2 in the blood. If I give 30 oxygen, okay, it should give you 150 oxygen in the blood. If I give you 50 FiO2 multiplied by 5, and it should give you 250 oxygen in the blood. Clear? If it is not giving, then you have a problem in transferring oxygen from the alveoli to the pulmonary arterial blood. Right? Okay. Now this is what is important for us to know as to what percent of oxygen we are giving to the patient and what is the ABG. Simple. 20, normally when I'm breathing 20 oxygen, I should get a PaO2 of 100 if my lungs are normal. But if I have a problem, then if I breathe 20, I will not get 100 oxygen. I might get just 50 oxygen in my blood. And then if you give me external oxygen, say 30%, it is expected that I will have PaO2 of 150. If it is not, then I'm in trouble. Now again, as I've told you, remember 20 into 5 is equal to 100. But if you have difficulty, I have an app for you. This is an app which is now extremely important in COVID situation. And you must start using it. Maybe tomorrow, as pediatricians, will you put on a COVID duty? Or this could be used for pediatrics. I mean, this is used for all the situations. So how the app works is something like this. See, this app, the name of this app is called as AADO2 difference. Okay. So this is the app. The name of this app is AADO2 difference. And you can use this app to assess as to what is happening. So you are seeing this app live. You all can see that now.
Yes.
Now, if your patient is getting 30% oxygen, so increase this 21% say to 30%. Clear? And put your ABG values here. So if your ABG shows PaO2 of say 63. Okay, now I have shown you lower down the AA gradient. Okay, you can see that gradient there. Okay, it shows 100 and PaO2 FiO2 ratio is shown as 210. And just imagine, just have a look. As I'm increasing FiO2 from 30, if I'm increasing the FiO2 and going to say 45, see the black line is getting more and more thicker. So I'm trying to show that it is not easy for the oxygen to go from the alveoli to the pulmonary capillaries. See, we're increasing the FiO2, but I'm not seeing an increase in PaO2. If on the same, let's imagine I give you an FiO2 of 60. What should be the expected PaO2 if everything is fine? 60 into 5.
300.
Now, when I bring this value to 300, see the AA gradient is now 76, which is a normal gradient. But if my PaO2 is not this much and is less, the gradient is now increasing. Okay. So if my FiO2 is 60 and PaO2 is just 126, it is lower than expected. Again, if you don't want to use even this, just remember 20 into 5 is 100. So 60 into 5 will be 300. If it is not 300, then you are in trouble. And this is a serious trouble. So all our patients who have pneumonias or lung disorders, they are assessed on one important factor, and that is AA gradient. Okay. The simplest way of trying to learn AA gradient is, remember, 20 into 5 is 100. I am breathing air which is 20% oxygen. My arterial blood will show 100 as the value. If my lungs are normal, right? If I have a problem, you give me 60% oxygen. And you might ask me, Dr. Dev Pujari, aap to bola 60% oxygen do, but how do you give 60% oxygen? आपके पास तो FiO2 मीटर नहीं है. But I always tell my friends, use Venturi valves. Venturi valves are a set of valves which are available for 300 rupees. They will give you an FiO2, right? So once you use a Venturi valve, okay, you will know how much oxygen you are giving. If you're giving 60% oxygen, as I've shown on this figure, your PaO2 should be 300, maybe 280, okay, but it cannot be 200. If it is 200, now imagine this, the normal PaO2 in the arterial blood is 100. Here you're talking of 200, but that 200 is on 60% FiO2.
Yes.
See, God willing, but it should not happen. But we could be there in COVID, or this could be used day in and day out. I think as pediatricians, it is time that we understand this, and it is very, very, very easy. The easiest thing is, please remember, 20 into 5 is 100. So 30 into 5 will be 150, 60 into 5 will be 300. If it is not that, if it is significantly low, then your patient is in serious trouble. So use AADO2 app to know this. We will go through this app again if you have difficulties, but at this moment, let's come back to this.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
How is the normal value of AA2 difference gradient?
Yeah. Now see, you know what? Yeah. Now, like if we go on this, you will see that increasing gradient. Okay. Like suppose somebody, if you look at the alveolar pressure, arterial pressure is 110 and arterial pressure is 10, say 100. So 110 to 10 will be a gradient of 10 in normal physiology.
Yes, sir. Okay.
We'll be going to that again. I'll show you everything then. Okay. Let's take this app out from here. Okay. So 20 into 5 is 100 is clearly shown here. Okay. Now, if you talk of entire ABG, then you just have to sum up onto these three things. Nothing more than this. So when you get a report of an ABG in hand, okay, your junior gives you that report. Only look at these points: pH, PCO2 and PO2, and calculated value of bicarbonate. Look at the oxygen saturation, and please remember, the oxygen saturation that you get on an ABG machine is calculated from PO2. So if you ask someone which oxygen saturation is more important, from ABG or from pulse oximeter, the answer is pulse oximeter. Pulse oximeter measures the saturation. ABG measures PaO. Clear? Okay, and then you have to enter FiO2. Ideally, you must enter FiO2 to calculate AA gradient. So these are the things that you need to look. That's all. Okay, when you look at ABG, nothing more than this. You can download these PowerPoint slides from net. If you put Dr. Devapudi and ABG, you'll get these slides. Okay, so these are the only things that you need to check. That's all. Now, having done that, okay, we will now come back to how do you assess acid-base status. I will just summarize what we learned up to this point. I told you that ABG is a combination of acid-base disturbance and disturbance of respiration. Clear? Now, how do you know this disturbance of respiration? Look at CO2 and O2. How do you know there is acid-base disturbance? Look at pH and CO2. Okay. If you are asked a question, if the relatives ask you, sir, how is this patient? How is his status of oxygenation? Remember, 20 into 5 is 100. If your patient is getting 30% oxygen, how do you give 30% oxygen? Use Venturi valves. And if your ABG shows 30 into 5 is 150 PO2, your patient is all right. But if your ABG shows on 30% oxygen, 100 PO2, your patient is in serious respiratory failure. Now the app will show you some more information on how do you kind of grade this app. So I've given the information here. Okay, you can see this information and you'll see how do you grade the degree of respiratory failure. At the moment, don't touch, it is there on your app, so you can do that. All this is shown here. Is it clear? Okay, so what we have, a very fast rush up is this. This you have understood. We have seen how you condense the ABG report, that you have understood. Okay, don't get into varieties of things. I have told you the two types of respiratory failures. Type 2 is the patient, typically an anticonvulsant has been given or a sedative has been given and his respiration now, he stops breathing. This is type 2. Treatment, make him breathe by Ambu bag. This is type 2. Type 1 is a typical failure that occurs in lung involvement. Okay, like pneumonias, ARDS, COVID lungs, all these are typical lung involvements. And okay, so this we have looked into it. Now, let's see how do you analyze ABG. So now you download my app, Complete ABG. So this app, Complete ABG, is the simplest app across the world. Okay, and it is 200% accurate. At this moment, more than 2 lakhs across the world are using this app. Maximum in US, then in rest of the world. Okay, and for in India is not even 5 to 10%. Okay, and don't have to put your brain or anything. Take an ABG report and enter the pH value. Now the green, whenever I have written green, is normal. So normal pH is 7.40. You are able to see this? Okay. Now, you know, if pH becomes acidic, the color will change to red. So let's imagine your ABG report shows pH of 7.28. Okay, or it shows a pH of say 7.21 or maybe 7.13. Let's say 7.13. Now, next thing you do is enter CO2 value. So his CO2 value, suppose, is 19. Your patient has metabolic acidosis. Simple. Now, if you want to go further, this could be renal tubular acidosis also. So press for extended ABG, and then you can calculate the anion gap. Right? So if is if your chloride level, which is lower than normal, then your anion gap is high. This is the only app in the world which will give you a syndromic diagnosis. Okay, so we'll see how. So if it is white, you have a high anion gap acidosis. Now, you put these levels, like put in glucose level, if it is 133, blood urea nitrogen, which is half of urea. So let's put it as 13. And if you can measure the osmolality, okay, good. But if you cannot, then serum sodium into 2. So normal serum sodium is say 135 into 2 will be 270. Now your diagnosis is patient has normal limit of osmolar gap. But suppose, let's say, now this BUN is suppose 234 this is about 45. If major osmolarity is say 560, your patient has toxic alcohol. That means this fellow has come to you, consumed significant amount of alcohol, and that is why he is acidotic. Okay. Those who want to go into details of the algorithm, we have given that also. But let's say this patient, if you don't want to go into details, really speaking of pediatrician at the bedside may not want to go into all these details. But if your pH is 7.13, CO2 suppose is 79, your patient has respiratory acidosis and metabolic acidosis. Now, you know what you must have seen, I'm not entering these bicarbonate value. See, as I move my CO2, see the bicarbonate is moving. Can you see that? So people have been talking and telling us about bicarb acidosis hota hai, alkalosis hota hai, vagara vagara. Okay, or the so-called base excess, base deficit. They're all areas of past. According to me, the least useful thing in ABG is bicarbonate. Bicarbonate is like a politician. अब देखो, अभी आज suppose बीजेपी का चल रहा है, तो बीजेपी को बाइकार्ब फॉलो करे, right? 100 लोग घूमते रहेंगे पीछे पीछे. Okay, that's what is moving. So bicarbonate is a slave to CO. You don't need to know bicarbonate. You need to know only two values and make it very simple. Make it very, when you go home, if you want to study the algorithm, this is the algorithm that I have given there, and you will be able to see it in the app. Okay, so you can study that. Okay, this app is a simple thing. If your patient has pH which is alkaline, say ये red है, green means normal है. Now alkali means blue. So as the pH becomes more, this color also changes. And let's say pH of 7.51. Find out कि CO2 कितना है. Let's say if this CO2 is 65. So diagnosis is metabolic alkalosis and respiratory acidosis. Okay, अब आपको और देखना है प्रेस फॉर्मेशन में metabolic alkalosis है. You put urinary chloride. Suppose urinary chloride is say more than 25 urinary chloride. Then you put, then your diagnosis is saline responsive alkalosis. If it is more than less than 40, okay, urinary chloride. Then look for urinary potassium. If it is say more than 30, then find out whether you have high blood pressure. Normal. If you have normal blood pressure, you have Gitelman's syndrome or Bartter syndrome. Okay, so I mean in this app, you don't have to put your head into it. How we have come to this diagnosis? Click here, and this is the algorithm. This is a unique algorithm. You know, this is developed by us to lead you to the diagnosis of what is wrong with the patient. So it's not just that we're giving you an ABG diagnosis. We're telling you, is it renal tubular acidosis? Is it type 1, type 2? All that can be known. My suggestion is play with this app. Okay, whenever you have free time, and if you really want to study about ABG, then I'm very passionate about this ABG book. This is the world's first book as an app. This is everything that you want to know about ABG, right from ABC of ABG. So I could have taken lectures straight from here. You can, you know, like we have made it absolutely free. Up WhatsApp में डालो, PowerPoint में you can share whatever you like. Okay, and then there are a lot of things which are there you can read. So there are graphs like this. Okay, so they'll give you all the details of ABG. So those who want to go in details of say ABG, the entire dynamic book, which has all the Henderson-Nesselbach equation, all that is there in this book. So the, you know, so we were worried about that equation. See, this is the equation that exists. You increase the bicarbonate, decrease the PCO2, and see the whole equation changes if you're interested. See, step by step, this equation will change depending on the values. So those who are mathematically interested, okay, it's all here. You can use that. You know, though our point of discussion today is acid base, I would like you to use this IV Fluids app. It's a wonderful app. Again, teach it to your staff, okay, and use it. So you can just enter the patient's weight. So let's say, आपको maintenance fluid देना है patient. Okay, so just enter the patient weight. Suppose patient's weight, say, is 53. Calculate the maintenance fluid. So we have given you कितना देना है, क्या देना है? DNS 3 ml per hour or 31 drops per minute or 93 micro drops per minute. So everything is here. Okay. If your patient has sodium problem, okay, you put his patient's weight, say the patient's weight is 30 kgs, right? Put the sodium level. If the sodium level is say 119, okay, then is he euvolemic, hypervolemic, or hypovolemic? If it's euvolemic, okay, is he in shock? If you say yes or no, okay, and from here, is he symptomatic or symptomatic? Is symptomatic, okay. Simple. He has, what has he got? Euvolemia and hyponatremia. Means he has got SIADH. Okay, how do you treat? This is how you can treat. Okay, so these are the typical apps that could be used at bedside. How to download these apps, we'll see at the end of the lecture. They're all free, both on Android and on iOS. Okay, so please use them. Now, be very careful when you connect ABG. Should not use too much of heparin. Just enough so that you take an heparin, throw it. And there should be no air contamination. If it happens, then the ABG report could be haywire and it's very difficult to interpret. So sometimes it happens that you have an ABG report, a patient को ऐसा दिखता नहीं है, कुछ गड़बड़ है, right? Patient is very serious and PO2 200 दिखा रहा है, okay? Air contamination should be always thought of. Very important. In that case, rely on a pulse oximeter reading and you might be benefited. So if you want to have a successful analysis of ABG report, okay. So there are 5 successful steps for ABG analysis. The first step will be to look at pH. Suppose आपके पास ये ऐप नहीं है, look at pH. pH less than 7.35 is acidemia, more than 7.45 is alkalemia. So you will know alkalosis or acidosis. Now you can find out CO2. If CO2 is high, it is respiratory acidosis. If CO2 is low, it is metabolic acidosis. And then you can go further and find out anion gap. And the 5th most important step is clinical correlation. Any of these numbers, okay, are not worth until you have taken a proper history. Like for example, I'll tell you, if there's a person whose fasting blood sugar is 85 and whose post-meal blood sugar is 118, is he diabetic with these values? Right, most of them would say no. Okay, but you never asked me whether he's on insulin. This fellow could be on insulin and he could very well still be diabetic. So even if you have ABG reports, whatever they might say, you need to take clinical correlation. You need to find out how much FiO2 is on. You need to find out on what ventilation settings is on. In that case, you need to then correlate these values and put it across. Okay. So, like I don't think I'll take you through a lot of these details. Now, very important thing is the respiratory abnormalities could be as simple as that. Like for example, see this. What abnormality of ABG this horse will have? Respiratory acidosis, because he's breathing in this bag, right? He's re-breathing in this bag. His blood CO2 levels will go up. Okay. Similarly, for example, when let's say our webinar is going on, you're comfortably looking at the monitor, and suddenly you find कि पैर के नीचे कुछ लग रहा है, अथवा नीचे देखा एकदम ऐसे, do you find अरे यार तो snake है? I was told कोल्हापुर में snakes काफी है, I was told, I don't know. नागपुर में तो कम है, but suppose ऐसे होता है. The first thing that you will do is you will start breathing very fast, and what abnormality you will have? Respiratory alkalosis. So you need to find out कि ये जो ABG दिख रहा है, is it matching with the clinical situation? Okay. So these are certain things which are, you can please download this app, and it's on the net, free, and then you will see all these cases also. Okay. My suggestion is, at this moment, if you don't want to put too much of it into your ABG, just use these apps. Okay. Meantime, when you want to play with those apps, and you will understand, because I have simplified the whole thing very, very clearly. Okay. So you don't have to really get it. So use these apps. I have so many other apps, but the relevant apps today are these. IV Fluids is another very useful app. And all the nurses should be empowered to use them. Because what I've realized is, sometimes, we are not very careful about common things, and the maintenance fluids may be going haywire. So all these things can be done. Now, these are certain cases. I think we'll not go through them. But what is important is, you must know that apps are perfect. They are 100% reliable. Correlate them clinically. And how do you download an app? Okay, I'll show you how. Very simple. Because a lot of people feel that I should discuss this part. So I'm just discussing with you. So if you have an Apple phone, okay, go to App Store. If you have Android phone, go to Play Store. And in this search, just put my name, Dev Pujari. DEOPU. You see Satish Dev Pujari there? Click Satish Dev Pujari. And see all these are the apps which are available. You can click and download any of these apps. Okay. Another very important app is ENRI. A lot of you might be using it in neural resuscitation. A very useful app. And this was with the NNF that we have used the algorithm. Term baby.
Assess risk factors. Equipment check. Assign roles and responsibility. Counsel, is baby breathing and crying? Cut the cord immediately. Place under warmer. Open airway. Gasping. Apnea or heart rate less than. Initiate PPV using room air. Pulse oximeter monitoring.
Squeeze 2-3. Squeeze 2-3. Squeeze 2-3.
Heart rate after 5 inflations.
So could you see those, how to download these apps? Very easy, but we must make a habit of being very precise. So gone are the days of being arbitrary. I believe it's very important to know and be very specific. So download them, use them, and they are available free. There's no problem. So ABG interpretation is an art and science. It's not just that you know numbers and you're perfect. No, you need to learn how to correlate those numbers with the clinical findings. I think I'm through. It's about 10 o'clock now. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. I'm too much,
Venkatesh sir.
yeah.
Venkatesh sir.
Hello. Hello. Yeah. Hello,
हाँ,
sir.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to ask one question, sir. Like in day-to-day practice, what are the common indications? Because ABG is the investigation which is hardly been ordered in day-to-day practice. So, what are the clinical situations when we should advise the arterial blood gases in OPD practice?
Right. That's a very good question. But you know what? Like, for example, let's say, I mean, you know, I was so much benefited by keeping this in mind. For example, renal tubular acidosis is fairly common. If I see a child who is not putting on weight, he has rickets. Okay, I do USG and find nephrocalcinosis. My diagnosis is RTA. Now, in last 35 years or even more of my practice, I have almost more than, I mean, I don't know the exact rate, but more than 700 patients of RTA which have been on my follow-up. Most are missed because we don't keep this in mind. Okay, same is true of, so for example, I would suspect and get an ABG in a child who is failing to thrive. Right from renal failure to every of those endocrine abnormalities, so all Barter's, Gutterman, all those syndromes, they could failure to thrive, right? Then if I see a patient, let's say this fellow has a seizures, this could be hypocalcemia, and there could be metabolic abnormalities which could cause hypocalcemias. Okay. Similar could be true of hypokalemias, hyperkalemias. They could be OPD level factors. Okay. So all these situations, like let's say a child who comes to me and his nails look blackish blue. Okay. This could be methemoglobinemia. And all these are no, see, the question is we all believe that, oh no, these are all uncommon things. Okay. But believe me, I've seen half of Nelson because these things happen. Somebody has missed them before they came to me. Right? But I'm not, that does not mean I'm asking you to do ABG for every little thing. Okay. But all these situations, and let's imagine, suppose you are not able to do an ABG, venous blood gas can be sometimes done. Okay. That can give you an issue about pH and CO2. So as a practitioner at bedside, I will measure pulse oximeter and find out saturation. If it's comfortable, I'm happy. Now I'll not do VBG. I will do a VBG to find out his pH and his bicarbonate level and then work out. If the alkalosis I have shown you, so put that value into our app. It will guide you as to where to go. Okay, so these are the things which I think we should be able to do that.
Yes. Another like suspected inborn error of metabolism.
Yeah, that of course.
Yeah.
So the moment you get, so that all is done. If it is acidosis, right? Then wide, narrow. Okay.
Yes.
So the wideness, ammonia, lactate, right? Pyruvate. So this was all branching. So that at the beginning should be from ABG.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. And in the sometimes in a very small babies, newborn or anything, when we collect the blood for the arterial blood gas, so what sometimes happens, like we may not differentiate between ABG or VBG because getting will be difficult. So what are the differences between the blood gas, like as far as the pH and the PCO2? Bicarbonate are concerned. PO2 will be definitely different, but what about pH, PCO2?
So what I do, that's again a very practical question. What I do is get an arterialized capillary. It is very easy in newborns. So arterialized capillary will tell me about oxygen. Okay. And it correlates fairly well with ABG as far as oxygen is concerned. Okay, as far as VBG is concerned, if you have an umbilical line, nothing like it will be a very good VBG. So combining arterialized capillary, pulse oximetry, and say umbilical venous sample, will give you ABG,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And you could trust on them very clearly because you have a central line VBG.
Mhm.
So pH and PCO2 and the ABG diagnosis is met. You have an arterialized oxygen, which is very come to PaO2. That you have correlated with
Okay.
pulse oximetry. Of course, pulse oximetry will have to see right or left because that's very important definition. But so pulse oximetry and combining these would give you a chance that you have assessed ABG in a newborn baby. The question is, if it is VBG, how would you differentiate, right?
Yeah. Huh.
So VBG is, now let's say this is a newborn baby. Saturation is 94 and your PaO2 is 45.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is VBG.
Okay. SaO2 and SpO2 needs to be correlated.
Absolutely. And pH is slightly acidic and PaCO2 up to about 50 with VB.
Okay. Okay, sir.
So pH could go to 7.32.
Yeah.
In a baby.
So okay. So in just now you have said about the methemoglobinemia, sir. So what will be the ABG abnormality in methemoglobinemia?
Yeah, if I would have shown you patients, but we don't have time. So what will happen is, let's say this fellow looks blackish bluish. His saturation with cyanosis, saturation should be less than 60-70. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is central cyanosis.
Yes.
In methemoglobinemia, sulfimoglobinemia, it gets fixed at about 85.
Yes.
So saturation of 85 with deep cyanosis that you see in methemoglobinemia, with the kind of methemoglobinemia, is definitely abnormal hemoglobin. Okay.
Yes. So SaO2 in methemoglobinemia will be.
So that won't go anywhere. Like the moment you give oxygen to a patient with methemoglobinemia, SaO2 go to 300.
PO2, sir. PO2 will rise.
PO2 will go to 300. Yeah, PO2 will go to 300. Saturation will be fixed. It will be remaining about 80-85.
In SpO2, in pulse ox saturation, will be low.
Yeah, see, when we talk of saturation, it is pulse ox. This is a calculated saturation.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So ABG will show you PaO2. The moment you give him oxygen, it could go to 300.
Okay.
With methemoglobinemia. I'm talking ABG. But the pulse oximetric saturation will remain at 85.
Okay. Yes.
So discrepancy.
Yes. Yes.
Venkatesh sir, any other questions are in chat box?
Not seen, sir. Can you say and?
Pardon me?
Yeah, Venkatesh sir.
Yes.
Hello.
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 Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
And one more question, sir. What about base excess, sir? In the ABG, they have a base excess. So what is its clinical importance?
Forget about base excess, base deficit.
We don't use because we also.
That is all history.
Okay.
Sir, yeah.
Sir, sorry.
Yes, I am listening.
Sorry. So, what about
not able to hear you.
Heparin, sir? How much heparin we should take? Like when we collect the sample, what is the ideal heparin should be?
Yeah.
Just rinsed or just 0.1 ml?
Just rinse the syringe with heparin.
Hello.
So just rinse the syringe with heparin.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah. No, I can.
Hello.
Yeah. I can hear you. Yeah.
So what is the heparin concentration we should use?
Right. So you know what? With 24 and less number needle, you have taken heparin.
And if we
put the entire thing out.
And is it, sir, even if it is processed, sir, if we process the sample within 10 minutes,
even then, heparin can change. Heparin is extremely.
And sir, even if we process the sample within. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. And sir, what about like if we process the sample within 10 minutes in the other lab,
Exactly.
is it necessary to keep under the cooler or some ice pack every time? Because we are processing within 10 minutes.
Right.
Even then it is necessary.
Yeah. So I'll answer your question. Okay, I got the question. Your question is, if I take ABG and assess the ABG sample immediately. Okay.
Possible without that.
Right now, if
Yes,
in
yes.
about 10 minutes, but if you have leukocytosis, okay, or thrombocytosis, it can still get affected. Okay, that could be a pseudo hypoxemia if that can happen. Ideally, it will be better to get it done as this, but it should be kept at a lower temperature. Definitely, it's better to shift it in ICU, even if it is to be assessed on 1/2 an hour's time. It should be done that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sir, does it can happen like if with an absolutely normal ABG value, patient can have an acid-base disorder?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much. See, in fact, if I imagine, so I have all conditions where ABG could be normal and there could be acid-base disturbance. At a simple example, normal pH means normal flow between acid and base. But it does not mean normal value. Ratio is normal. Means suppose acid is 1 and base is 25 and this give you a pH of 7.4. Then if the acid is 2 and base is 48, the pH will be still same. Or if the acid is half and the base is 12, the pH will be still same. So normal acid base is a normal ratio between acid and base. The values could be different. So it is quite likely that even with normal ABG, you could have an acid-base disturbance. And most of them are then mixed disturbances.
Okay.
Yeah, most of them will be mixed disturbances.
Sir, everybody else know the causes of acidosis, alkalosis, and everything. But by your experience, can you elaborate the common causes, say metabolic acidosis, metabolic alkalosis, respiratory acidosis, practically?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So let's imagine if it is metabolic. If I find a patient, that's a very good question you ask. If I find a patient, somebody says this is a report. If shows acidosis, shows metabolic acidosis.
Yeah.
First thing that comes in my mind is he in renal failure? Okay, one of the very important causes. And then what happens sometimes is some of the chronic renal failures, they get properly hydrated, and at that moment, their creatinine could be almost normal, but not lived into the creatinine age. Like, I have seen this happening that 7 kg and the creatinine is 0.6.
Yeah.
Okay. Now somebody just passed, 0.6 is nothing much. Okay, but the thing is, some of these fellows could have significant acidosis.
Yeah.
And some of these patients could have more tubulopathies than globulopathies. Okay, so some of these fellows could have almost normal creatinine, could have fairly severe acidosis. So, like this but the most important thing, diabetes. The fellow is fine. Okay, you do an ABG for some other reason. Okay, because he is breathing fast, and somebody thought this could be lower respiratory infections. Done ABG and metabolic acidosis. My next reference, creatinine and sugar is 600. So diabetic, right? Then of course, hypoxia, so lactic acidosis.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are certain common sequences, and then I will of course differentiate wide and narrow NN gap and go on further. That is for acidosis. Respiratory alkalosis is most often because of hyperventilation for varieties of reasons. there's a respiratory alkalosis could be an early marker of sepsis. So you see a baby, okay, whose pH is alkaline and CO2 is low. This could be one of the early established evidence-based marker of sepsis. Then, of course, there are varieties of conditions, central hyperventilation, things like this. Okay, if it is metabolic, then we know the same kind of things. One of the things that I would always keep in mind is RTA.
Yeah.
Okay. And alkalosis, Bartus and Gittelman syndrome. These are things which I will. But of course, one of the very important things could be simple dehydration. Okay, so childhood dehydration could have acidosis. Okay, then a saline responsive metabolic alkalosis is a common thing. So this follows, the commonest thing is that this child came to with bronchiolitis. Okay, and a lot of people give diuretics. On the 5th, 6th day, you do an ABG, and you find his metabolic alkalosis. Okay, if his diuretics continue for same time, what happens is because of alkalosis, he develops hypokalemia.
Yeah.
Okay, and the fellow develops respiratory muscle weakness, and now goes in serious trouble because he has a lung problem. Okay, and his muscles becoming weak really complicate the situation, and then becomes a vicious cycle. So my next question will be: is he on diuretic? Is he on steroids? Is he on antifungal IV drugs? Amphotericin is known to cause metabolic alkalosis. So a lot of these drugs also can cause these conditions. So this is just a reflex thought process that could go in and out.
Apart from RTA, sir, normal and N-gap acidosis.
Yeah.
What conditions you have seen?
Yeah. Now, if it is normal N-gap acidosis, mostly it will be RTA. But other tubulopathies can also present this way. In that case, then you need to know what is the bicarbonate maximum in this child and then evaluate him further away. So, for example, we saw a patient with medullary cystic disease. Okay. This fellow had a similar finding like this. Essentially, it is a bicarbonate defect, and so you need to find out the tubular maximum backup. And of course, again, there are a lot of drugs, for example, which also can cause this kind of features. Heavy metals are known to cause this. It is a normal N-gap acidosis.
But fluid loss, diarrhea, vomiting.
Yeah, of course. They have to be ruled out in the beginning. But what I was thinking is, some patients who come to you in OPD and have those kind of things. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Diarrhea could have all kinds of things. If they get a renal function, it becomes wide N-gap.
Yeah. In chat box, somebody is asking how to identify a compensated ABG.
Right.
How to decide ABG is compensated? That is a basic question.
Now, see, if, for example, if you have pH in a normal range and CO2 and bicarbs have gone haywire, suspect mixed disorder. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Of course, then there are varieties of other things. For example, if the bicarbonates are high, say 40, okay, and the pH hasn't shifted as much to an alkaline range, is coming towards normal, he definitely has an associated acidic abnormality. Okay, so whenever you see the three components behaving in such a way that the pH is not getting reflected into that, think of a mixed disorder. Of course, then there's a lot of things which can be shown. There could be 3 mixed disorders. So, but these are very simple notes that I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And the whole chapter could be taking about 2 hours. I can talk about it. I think it will be difficult to put it in today's discussion.
I think this issue of ABG cannot be completed in a short talk or in a short lecture. I think if everyone plays with your app, I think that is the best way to understand HBG and improve our understanding and outcome in patients.
Absolutely.
Actually, in Play Store, your apps are very famous because we are already knowing about the app. But everybody should use it. Yeah.
And unfortunately, in India, their use is not as much. And I want everybody to use this.
Yeah. Dr. Prasanna, anybody wants to interact? Anybody can unmute themselves and interact.
Nanavadekar sir told that he is using his apps since long time.
Yeah.
Shishir, I have one question for sir.
Yes, sir.
Nowadays, as regard to COVID patients, this happy hypoxia concept is much discussed. So what is the pathophysiology?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, one of my very early webinars on COVID, if you're interested, I show the link. What happens is this one, first important thing is, nobody exactly knows why you get into happy hypoxia. So there are varieties of hypotheses, but no one knows it. That is definite. There's no question about it. That there's nothing like a complete knowledge base that you know why it is happening. Now, if you talk of so-called happy hypoxemia, there are two components. Happy hypoxia begins, one of the very important markers which makes you unhappy is breathing difficult. Now, you look at the way when it started in US especially, in New York, then sudden deaths were happening. There a patient comes, saturation 94 and dies in 6 hours. This was happening. Literally, people stopped using non-invasive ventilations. They thought there's no time, intubate, and that's all. Because the suddenness was very different. Now, why it was happening, and these patients were not breathless. So it was happening because that some of these patients were trying to compensate by increasing the tidal volume. Okay, the concept came from Italian countries. Gatinino is, you must have heard, is one of the top names in adult intensive care. So it goes by Gatinino's hypothesis that, and he speaks about his own friend. So he had COVID, and everybody in the Western world was afraid that hospital jayenge to intubate ho. Okay, so they would be at home, and at home they would be breathless, breathing comfortably. But interestingly, there was a volume trauma, as if you're on a vent, So if my tidal volume is 500 ml, I'm at home, I'm comfortable, breathing comfortably, but I'm inhaling 600 ml of air. Okay, normal minute ventilation is 100 ml per kg per minute. Okay, if it goes to 130 ml per kg per minute, you end up with volume trauma. Now, it took a time where this distress didn't come. So that was major reasons why the patients were not unhappy, okay, because this feeling was not happening. Now, why it was not happening is, they say this is a pulmonary vasculopathy. Means, normally when we talk of lungs, our focus goes on alveolus and the terminal bronchioles. But we don't think of pulmonary vasculature. We don't think of how the pulmonary vasculature behaves, okay? And that behavior is governed by the autonomic nervous system, okay? Where the sensation of distress is missing. So this is the one important cause of the inverted comma happiness with hypoxia. The other possible thing is that people believe that there's a problem with dissociation of oxygen to the peripheral tissues. Okay, so some of the free oxygen gets dissociated and the tissues still maintain the oxygen levels, which is not felt as tissues are getting hypoxic. Okay, so these are two reasons. In fact, the best theory I found, if you go on Facebook, there's Society of Anesthesia, and there's a European anesthetist who is basically of Indian origin, Srinivasa. So you Google his name, he's done a lot of work on so-called hypoxemia, but let me tell you, nobody really knows why exactly happens. These are two hypotheses which are increasingly getting talked about, but not much is known as to why it happens. But this is one thing sure, there's a significant amount of pulmonary vasculopathy. This is not only the autonomic disturbance, this also is a microangiopathy. So some of these patients get their pulmonary vasculature blocked, okay, because of coagulation abnormality. So there could be hypercoagulation, there could be coagulation abnormalities, which also could cause this. So it is typically not ARDS. Unlike in typical ARDS, where the compliance of the lung decreases, in COVID lung, initially it increases. And then it starts to decrease. Now, why it behaves this way? Still, I mean, it's a matter of research, but not much is
So I have one more question. It has been a common observation that those patients who were just oxygen, they survived better than those on ventilator. So is there ventilator intervention is causing some more problem in such COVID patients?
Yeah, so your question is ventilator causing more problems as compared to non-invasive ventilation, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now, if you see the international sepsis guidelines, see last 30 years, what I've seen is there's a decline in the incidence of intubation and invasive ventilation as compared to non-invasive. Correct? That is a universal truth. So we follow the sepsis guidelines as to when to intubate. The important thing is, especially in US, the sudden deaths made them intubate, one. Second is the fear that they had in mind was that if you use high flow systems, it will be dangerous to healthcare workers. Like, let's say you use BiPAP. Okay, use flow of 50 liters per minute. Now, they would infect the healthcare workers was another major thing. Like even high flow nasal cannula was not indicated because of this aspect. Now, suddenly most of them, what they did was created a negative pressure ICUs. And after creating negative pressure, these gases were going into the ICUs, they were getting diluted, and this was the next thing that we did. So in fact, we did an oxygen helmet. So I worked on this project as a pulmonary mechanics consultant. This was a project with IIT Bombay and Thermax. So it got inaugurated just about 15 days back. And there's a company in Bangalore which is manufacturing that. So it's an oxygen helmet. It's an actual helmet. We cover the entire thing. And it gives you CPAP. When you give CPAP through oxygen helmet, it is less than the ventilator CPAP. So the maximum could be just 10. And then we studied the entire dynamics of how the air flows into this helmet. So I can send you the literature of that. So in fact, I worked with IIT Bombay on that project, and that is now available in market, and it will be available soon. So these are certain things which people started doing to avoid infection to others, because the high flow systems will do that. Having said that, the question that you answered was whether the intubation increases the mortality. So in the initial phases, this was true. People, the moment you intubate, it was noted. Over a period of time, as people started learning about it, they realized that this way, non-invasive methods could be tried. This got lowered down. But even otherwise, intubation is fraught with danger in significant hypoxemia. So that is it. As per Zimmerman, intubating patients with significant hypoxia carries a mortality of 30% in pediatrics. So there are a lot of studies. If you look at Zimmerman's textbook, you'll see this study.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Anybody wants to ask any questions? Mirgundi sir, we can stop here. We don't have any questions from the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
As
very
I
nice.
said,
Yeah. Continue,
Yeah.
sir. Continue.
Yeah. As I previously said, it is very difficult to understand this complex issue of ABG in a small lecture. But we were fortunate that we got some guiding words from Dr. Dev Pujari, which is the name equivalent to APG. So we are fortunate today that we had so many interactions related to common issues in practice. We are very thankful to that. And I personally feel that unless we start using this very useful app, we will not be able to be self-confident and expert in this field. So I appeal every member of my association to start using this app, and we will again gather together on this issue after some time. And I think we will be more efficiently expressing ourselves, and we will be more efficiently managing our patients, I think. And in today's COVID time, really it is very essential to understand this issue. And it is fortunate that we could discuss this issue during this COVID time also. And we got such presence in proper time. Thank you very much, sir, Dev Pujari sir, for giving your valuable time and interacting with all of our members. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.